the coalition of the sort of the radical left. Syriza came within 2 percentage points of winning an election and forming a government that would have renounced the debt, that would have gone ahead and, you know, completely changed course on austerity, and would have pursued an entirely different sort of economic model in response to this crisis that's going on in Greece. And Syriza, when I visited Greece 2.5 years ago, was still polling at 3% of the vote. And in May this year, they were up to 17. A month later, they were basically up to 29. They can say, wait, how could they win an election with 29%? There's a lot of parties. 2 more percentage points. The Greek electoral system, there's 300 members of parliament. Whatever party gets the most votes gets 50 extra seats. 50 of the seats go to whoever got the most votes. 2% more, they would have gotten the 50 seats. The center-right party would not. They would have been in a position to form a government. And they went there. In 2.5 years, they went from 3% to an eyelash of actually being able to form a left government. We all need to be thinking about how the hell can we make something like that happen. Because the center-left and the center-right political parties are totally discredited, and they're not going to do what needs to be done. They are not doing anything. Doesn't matter whether it's PASOK, the Social Democratic Party in Greece. They pursued austerity that was totally counterproductive and just punishing people to no good end, just like the center-right government is doing now. The Zapatero government in Spain, the socialist government, they were voted out because they were administering austerity, pointless austerity, just like the center-right party is now. If you ask me, I think if the socialists had been in power in France, they would have been voted out and the center-right would have been voted in. Instead of Sarkozy getting voted out, electorates are doing the right thing. They're basically saying, anybody that presides over this pointless austerity, we're going to vote them out. And they're just basically trading center-right, center-left, and they all are presiding over the austerity. Well, a party like Syriza said, we won't. You want somebody that will not preside over pointless austerity, we will promise you that. That's what we're going to do. And they were sincere. I know those people. So we need an electoral strategy. We also need a defense strategy. I'm under no illusions that the powers that be are going to allow us to sort of build up our forces and our alternative institutions without basically, you know, subjecting us to whatever attacks they have at their disposal. This is not a transition that they have any interest in. The 1% is not about to give up. And I'm under no illusions in that. As far as I'm concerned, you know, the days where the revolutionaries would pick up the gun, that is long since gone. That's not how transitions go. That's not how you protect yourself. The only way you can protect yourself, and protect yourself in Greece would have been if Syriza had won that election. You really think the Greek military would not have been considering a coup d'etat? You really think the CIA would not have been thinking about helping them? That's naive. That's very naive. Well, how would the Syriza government have protected itself? Well, the truth of the matter is those political parties really had no plan or capability of protecting themselves from that kind of anti-democratic type of response. On the other hand, the autonomous movement basically did have a plan, and the autonomous movement had the capability of saying, if you do that, Athens will burn. That kind of ability to engage in mass resistance, in the end, they have all the guns, so we don't want a shooting war. But in the end, they can't stop us unless we obey their instructions to stop us. If we refuse, and now that's a very difficult thing to organize, but I do think as we're going forward over the next 20 years, we've got to be preparing ourselves along those sort of lines as well. And then one last thing we have to do is we have to be much more clear and willing to engage in rational, sensible discussion about what are we going to do instead. Do we really have a plan that's coherent? Do we really have better ideas? We've got to do a lot better job than we have in the past. We can't just say, you know, I can just imagine I can imagine a prettier world, one in which everybody's cooperating, one in which everybody is happy, one in which there's no inequality and there's no oppression. Yeah, it's good enough. it's important to imagine that is possible because it is possible, and don't let anybody tell you it's not. But that's not enough. It's not just going to happen automatically. And people are... I'll close with this. Look, we don't have a great track record. Those of us who say you can do better than capitalism. Because part of our track record was communism. So reasonable people really have a right to insist, do you really know what you're doing this time? Do you really have a better idea? Sensible people are going to demand that of us, and we actually have to come up with a better answer to that. We have to come up with a more coherent answer to that, and one that we feel more sure about ourselves. But that's a long process. That's what this kind of discussion and these kinds of arguments and these kinds of back and forths are all about. That's an important part of what we're going to have to do to go forward too.
Tom?
Okay. A similar question. How to be able to have this transition, and more specific, within your model, did you also develop clear thoughts about what kind of money, what kind of financial institutions, so that we don't have this that we have today, where money concentrates and accumulates, and and banking produce money out of nothing? And did you?
Okay.
Or do you just think I'm stupid? Because I think it's necessary to have other kind of money and banking system to be able to have this transition. Because if we don't have fair distributed power, how would we be able to doing what you were describing in this model?
The answer to your question, well, is there money and are there banks and a participatory economy, is mostly no. And then you're going to think I'm stupid because you just said that's impossible. So let me explain why. What is it that we don't need money? I mean, ordinarily you need money to decide, I want to buy something, so I need money to do it. Well, essentially, we have a system for making that decision. People have effort ratings, and that qualifies them to go ahead and be approved to sort of buy what they've asked for. That's all been settled. Do we actually have to pass pieces of paper back and forth to do that? I mean, all you'd have to do is keep an account. So you're going to have an account. You'll have a swipe card. If you want to think of it, you have a bank account. You have a bank account with society. You have a swipe card. And when you go and you take things that you're consuming, they're basically deducting from your bank account. And every year what went into your bank account is basically your effort rating. Can people save? Yes, just don't take out as much as your effort rating warrants. And then you can save and you can consume more later. Can people borrow? And this is where banks come in. Ordinarily, when people borrow, they do that by going to a bank and asking for a loan. Or what's the same thing, you go to a bank and they send you a credit card, which is a bank sending you the credit card saying, we've pre-approved you for a $5,000 credit limit, that we've pre-approved you for a $5,000 loan. So is it possible in a participatory economy to say, I know my effort rating doesn't justify me being able to buy this much, but I want to buy this much and I'm going to pay back later? Of course we can do that. You still have to have somebody sitting in judgment of the credibility of the loan request. And instead of having it be a bank or the loan officer at a bank, we're proposing that, well, it would be sensible to let the neighborhood consumption councils do that. Your neighbors have to basically sit in judgment and say, wait a minute, this person has just consumed more than they should, than their effort rate awarded for 7 years in a row, and they're a year and a half from retirement. Is this really credible anymore? They're not really going to pay this back. So that kind of decision is going to have to be done someplace. That's important. That's the kind of discussion you have to have. There are certain decisions that have to be made. There are certain no's that have to be delivered in certain situations. Who's going to do it, and why would they do it, and why would not somebody else do it? So our answer was no. We're going to have the neighborhood consumption councils do that. Now, in terms of, on the way to our system, as long as you have a market economy, you're going to need money. As long as you have capitalism, you're going to need a financial sector. The best solution is to nationalize it. we should learn our lesson. They don't serve the public interest. They do dangerous things.